FORA.tv. The world is thinking.
I thought the other element that I enjoyed in the book was the toy industry. And you talk about a number of different toys that came from the various, or one of the trio, usually the war side of things or the military. But I was surprised you didn't spend more time talking about video games, because that is such a big category. Last year it turned over more than the Hollywood box office. Mm-hmm. Was there a reason you didn't kind of explore more about video games?
You could easily do a book on the ties between the military and video games, because it's such a reciprocal relationship. It's give and take. So to answer, I mean, I could have easily done a whole chapter or a whole book on it. But yeah, there's just so much else to talk about. But I guess I did have a fair chunk on the games. I guess the story that's not well known is that video games were invented by military people. The first patent went to a fellow named Ralph Baer, who was a Jewish immigrant to the United States. And he was working for a military contractor called Sanders Associates. But his real love was television. So by day he was designing, warhead guidance systems. But by night he was fooling around on his television, because he was convinced you could do something more with it than just show television programs on it. So the first thing he came up with were, handheld controllers, and each person could control a dot of light on a TV, and they chase each other around, which is, wow. What an amazing game. But it was the start.
Compared to Gods of War today, or Halo.
Exactly. But he kept working at it, and he came up with something called the Brown Box, which was the first video game console. And they licensed it, and it was repackaged as the Magnavox Odyssey. Right. And that, I believe, came out in 1972. And he got the patent on video games. And so for the first 17 years, I think it was, every company that made a video game had to pay a license fee to Sanders Associates. So whether it was Sega or Nintendo or Atari, all these guys paid licensing fees to a military contractor. So every time you were playing, when I was a kid and I was playing Asteroids, I was actually paying to design weapons. So, which is funny. And now it's come full circle, where the military is using video games to train. And one of the things I talk about in the book, the company that I mentioned earlier, iRobot, when I went to visit their headquarters, this PackBot that they have, the thing that picks up bombs and explores caves, they used to have this big console that you would control this thing with, and it would have knobs and buttons, and the soldiers complained that it was way too complicated. So they redesigned it, and it now uses an Xbox or PlayStation controller. And so they let me drive it, and having grown up with video games, and I like to consider myself an expert video game player, I was driving this thing around, and within 20 seconds I had it mastered. So here's video games are training people to be soldiers, and they don't even know it.